I invite you to check out those resources and to fuel our thinking for the discussion, because we do have a 90-minute program in which 45 minutes of that will basically be addressed with our panel and Q&A. And then we'll go out to all of you who are all working on different water systems and can contribute your ideas on how we both educate and engage audiences in understanding the total water system, but also how we optimize systems using new tools like data and artificial intelligence and the things that you know and do. One thing I know is not easy to do for water systems is multitasking, at least when you're human. So let me just drop this note. And I think if you could just let me know when Chakri joins, that would be super. I think we are set.
I will do that. I messaged him, sorry. I messaged him, and as soon as he joins, I will sort of alert you.
That would be super. So what I'm going to do is share my screen here and give you just a bit of context, because Global Waterworks was introduced to the ThinkWater team out of Cornell University about 8 years ago. And we were so impressed with what they were doing and how they were working with the water system and educating people on their different parts and roles, and the diversity of our water systems to help them operate more efficiently. And I'm going to share this video, and just wanted to point out that this whole article in the chat does include a lot of different examples of efficient water systems. And it also notes our wonderful panel, whom you can link over to learn more about. Mordecai Feldman, who's joining us from Israel. He and I met about 7 years ago at the Israel Water Show, and he is an expert in water loss management across distribution systems for drinking water services, servicing municipalities across the globe, and also guiding the International Standards Organization on best practices for managing water loss. An amazing resource. I learned he was just here in India at Chennai and then in Bangalore last August, talking about how do we support 24/7 water. So a key systems challenge. Susan Springsteen, you met a few months ago. She has since been to Bangalore and pitched to the Thai organization, and she runs H2O Connected, an award-winning leak detection organization that uses intelligence to guide toilet leaks, the largest source of water loss in buildings, and helps hotels, very large-scale buildings, as well as individual residents with surprise leaks, which can cost bunch of money, but also just completely upset our water balance. So Iyyunni is an ecosystem entrepreneur guided by his sense of humanizing and optimizing entrepreneurial systems and community infrastructure. And he will add a dose of humanity, I think, or just humor, I think, to our discussion as he talks about the way we can operate more efficiently when we work together. And of course, we can all go far if we're alone and go fast, but we can go much further and endure much longer if we have the benefit of everyone's collective knowledge. And this video will share a little bit about what that looks like. I'm introducing the ThinkWater team out of Cornell.
We are ThinkWater. We are educators, parents, scientists, policymakers, business leaders, students, artists, and many others who think differently about water education. We care deeply about the water in our rivers, our drinking glasses, our atmosphere, our oceans. We care about the water and water use hidden in our lives. Not just the pretty picture of a waterfall on our cell phone, but the water needed to make and use our cell phone. ThinkWater is a movement for thinking about water in a new way. Deep, fluid, and clear. We already have lots of great water education programs and materials. But wouldn't it be great to make even better use of them by thinking about them differently? You bet it would, and that's our plan. We believe that the next big thing in water education isn't water, it's thinking. And at ThinkWater, we know the science of thinking. We know that memorizing information is not knowledge. Based on the research of cognitive scientist Derek Cabrera, ThinkWater is creating an awareness of the way we think about things. In other words, the way our brains naturally organize and construct knowledge out of information. When we add thinking into the equation of water education, the information and programming we already have will be more effective, resilient, and sustainable. ThinkWater is a force multiplier. It will develop a deep understanding of water curricula and activities, and simultaneously develop robust thinking skills. Let's see what the power of thinking can do.
So this organization was funded with $1 million grant by the USDA to educate students across the globe on water systems thinking. And they use a model called D.S.R.P. D is really defining the individual part of the system. S is for what is the total system consisting of? It's right here, distinguishing the parts of the system. And then understanding, what are your boundaries for the project that you're working on? If it's wastewater, if it's drinking water, if it's a watershed, or if it's an individual building. And then figuring out the relationships. For instance, energy and water together in a building could be a means to save money if you reduce the heat in a building, but that could cause Legionella. So there are unintended consequences of modifying parts of the system when it's supposed to all work together. And Susan knows this: if you try to optimize your water use by reducing the flow in a toilet, pretty soon the toilet won't work. So you're flushing 2 to 3 times, and your efforts to save water were unsuccessful. So we need to understand the total system and how it works together. And that's what our panel will talk about this morning, based on their individual perspectives on that system. What I wanted to point out too is that we did acknowledge that GROK, artificial intelligence, can help us get a better picture of a total system when we're each operating independently. And I did ask GROK to provide an outline, and each of you can download the tools here of a drinking water system, an environmental system, an in-building system. And can you see my screen now? Because sometimes it doesn't show as well when I'm in. Can everyone see this? So the drinking water system does point out the points of entry. Oh, this is actually, I believe this is the environmental system labeled differently, and it shows there are human sources of pollution, industry discharges, urban runoff, and natural sources of pollution of an environmental system. So it traces the different areas of impact, as well as understands the ways in which we can work with nature to solve these things. And we've identified the vulnerabilities, or we asked GROK to do that. Now, I didn't have GROK here in a verbal form, but I just wanted you to know this tool is available to anyone. It's free. It's on x.com, and you can click this link in the actual documents here. So it looks like I mislabeled one of the documents, but hopefully not all of them here. Let me just bring this down. You can see the in-building water system. You have a point of entry, a water meter, a main shutoff valve, and it traces the system, traces the vulnerabilities, and also identifies the areas where you can have the biggest impact, like toilet leaks or extensive showers or inefficient fixtures. And we know from the WOW team that they have expertise in addressing all parts of these systems. So, so today's panel is, I'm going to turn it back over to them, stop sharing here. And we'll have Mordecai and Susan and Chakri discuss sort of the role that they have in their systems and how they got to that point, and because of their work, how they view the importance of systems thinking. So Mordecai, if you could go first, and just to set the stage, we'll have about 25 minutes of this discussion and then turn it over to the audience. So actually probably about 35 minutes of the panel. So Mordecai, great to have you here. What are your thoughts on the systems thinking as you look at distribution systems and guide the world on water loss management?
First of all, depends on the system we are coping with. The challenges in India are totally different than the ones in, let's say, Europe or USA. For us, water in tap is obvious. It's not even a question. In India, you get water supply maybe 1 hour, 2 hours per day. There are large projects right now on course to shift to 24/7, but it's a very it's long and a costly process. Now, for example, in Israel, we have a highly regulated system. The water authority regulates almost every issue regarding the water utility and the water system. We have regulations regarding the pressure, regarding the water loss, regarding the level of service in terms of service of the customers or engineering requirements. Everything is regulated. Among that is, for example, we need to have active master plans all times. The master plans relate to the future expansions of the system according to the expansion of the city, which is, if you compare again to India, one of the reasons that the systems deteriorated is that there was no maintenance and there was no expansion of the system according to the expansion of the city and the population. So there was not enough water. Then you reduce the time of supply, shift to intermittent supply, and once you do that, you are in real trouble to be to be there. And it's really bad. Intermittent supply causes more leakage. We call it a vicious cycle. Once you have air in your system, you have the water polluted, you have more leaks, and then it goes more leaks, less water, less time, more air in the system. Everything is like a cycle. Now, if I go back to Israel, the water authority actually controls everything. Water by law is a national resource. So the state is responsible for the, let's say, production of water, because we have lots of desalination, on the abstraction of water, on the supply of the water up to the municipalities. The national water carrier supplies water to all cities. So the system is controlled and regulated at all times to fit with the current and the future demands. Just one, I mentioned one last sentence. I mentioned desalination, because actually we don't have enough water. We don't have enough natural resources of water. So once it was evident that we face a shortage of water, desalination plants have been constructed. And much of the potable water today in Israel is desalinated. So we take care all the time, and one after last. And for example, as to promote the entire systems now by law, all the water utilities have to install AMI systems for the metering of the consumption. This is by law, this is a must by the year 2026. All the utilities have to complete the installation of the AMI systems. This way, we are supposed to be more efficient.
And you
And
are.
that brings us to thinking, because once you have such volume of data, then you have opportunities for using this data in many, many ways.
Right, to identify places that aren't functioning well, to do advanced maintenance and reduce your costs across the system. And just so everyone knows, in 2 months in the March program for WOW, we will be talking with the leader of digitizing the Sea of Galilee and also the desalination plants and many rivers and waterways across the world, IOSite, Natan Zuta, with whom I know you work with very closely, Mordecai. So that will be worthwhile. And Mordecai is working with India on that 24/7 water vision. So so save your questions for him on that. And thank you very much for that lead in. Susan, your focus on the microsystem within the building.
That's right. We take it. We have a sort of a different domain with different challenges and different factors that are considered. But Mordecai is absolutely right. The last statistic we saw when it comes to fresh water availability, it's always amazed me that only 1% of the world's water supply is available for potable use, and so it's a challenge even on a good day. And our focus is after the meter. So it's already in the building. It's there's a variety of different ways that water can be wasted inside a building. Certainly faucets, leaks inside walls. But one of the ways that what we focus on is the one leak that people just completely miss, and that's the leaking toilets. So flush toilets, we focus on flush toilets, and most of our work has been done in the United States. And so we've got roughly over 300 million flush toilets in the United States. Our EPA estimates that 20% are leaking at least 50 gallons, that's about 200 liters, a day at any point in time. So even though a lot of folks, the common feeling in the United States is that, if toilets are leaking, it can't be that bad. But we've actually clocked, because we have a system that goes inside a toilet tank that can detect all the different ways that toilets are wasting water. But we can also quantify that waste, and we can quantify the flush volume. So we have millions of points of data on toilets. And we know that a running toilet, for instance, where the flapper's wide open in a flush toilet, can waste over 7,000 gallons of water a day if it's on a public water system at 60 PSI or more. So that's a tremendous amount of water coming out of one toilet. So if you think of somebody, if you think of somebody who flushes the toilet and then leaves for work and the chain hangs up, it could waste it can waste that amount of, that can waste about half that amount of money just while, half that amount of water just while they're at work. So it's a big issue. And because there's no water on the floor, there's no sign that there's a problem. And so many of these problems get missed. Components break down, and so we are wasting, in the United States, we're wasting well over 1 trillion gallons of water a year just through leaking toilets. And our data is showing that the EPA's estimate of 20% of the toilets are leaking is a huge underestimation. When we install a system, somewhere between 50% and 70% of the toilets have at least one water wasting issue. So just to give you an idea of the degree, we just did a an apartment building with 152 toilets in it. And they had very good maintenance, very diligent maintenance. Even so, in the first 30 days, our device detected over 110,000 gallons of wasted water. That's just 30 days, just 152 toilets. So it's an amazing amount of water, and it's also it's an economic problem, because that water being wasted, if they didn't know about it and couldn't fix the issues, would have added $25,000 to their water and sewer bill. So, I mean, and this is not unique. So, you know, the amount of water being wasted at the building level is extremely significant. And I think some of the big, you know, there's just an education, it starts with education, right? Because people, where people may see a leak and know that they're wasting water, they have no idea the degree of water waste through toilets. And if you can get folks, or, you know, small leaks through sinks or taking long showers, people don't realize the absolute problem with that. And I see somebody's talking about the behind the wall cisterns. Actually, some of those also do waste water. We're doing studies on that now, because the feedback I am getting, I was just in India about a month ago, and I had the pleasure of meeting quite a few of the folks that are leaders in water and plumbing in India. And the feedback I got is that some of these concealed cisterns actually they waste a lot of water because of things that get inside the cistern. And so I'm just responding to a comment that came through on the chat. So we are studying the concealed cisterns, and our system should work in that as well. So, but it's an education issue over here. You know, there does not seem to be any kind of real focus on water and water conservation. It seems to be you know, kind of the, you know, the just put by the wayside. All the focus is on energy and, you know, and conserving electricity, and water does not seem to be a focus. And that just needs to change, because if people focus on it, there's a lot they can do to conserve water, especially in buildings.
Yeah, well, a very important part. It's about education, and it's about change management, and that's why we have Chakra here, because we're hoping to hear that there might be some hope to change people. But in fact, I've heard from the U.S. plumbing groups that they've decided it's far easier to modify systems than it is to get people to change their behaviors. So, Chakra, what's your hope for us looking at water systems and engaging people in the process?
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you for
A lot
joining.
of things come to mind. A lot of things come to mind, Mary. And I'm glad Mordecai and Susan spoke about first the digitalization of water assets. There was a post the other day about river systems being digitalized as well. And as you know, the water movement in clouds and etc. gets tracked by a number of agencies as well. And I think this thing about waste that Susan was talking is even more a problem than we can imagine. What I see us grappling in this WOW forum as well is we are all experts in areas. And so we have metrics we want to sit with, and we don't see the metrics of other experts. And then the communication doesn't happen. Without the discussion of soil, without discussion of plant ecology, discussion of water is really not fruitful. How many millions of liters you might save? It's not enough. Also, there's a challenge, and this is one thing that systems thinking tries to bring in a lot, is what is it that is unseen by me, which is seen by some other expert? So that's the other very, very important thing. So the thing that I would like to see in groups like this is what we call symmetry. Symmetry is essentially what is emerging for each other in these conversations. We are not processing enough. We are too busy reacting to information rather than absorbing it, seeing the transdisciplinarity of it. So in a warm data lab, for instance, that's exactly what happens is, what does the politics got to do with water? I mean, everybody knows about it, but nobody speaks about that. what does family and water got to do? How does law and water intersect? And I think for our civilization, water is the first and the final frontier for organizing. If we learn to organize water, I think there's a lot of hope. Though I have a sense that the point metrics are useful for the experts, but they're not useful for the patterns. So when there's a water cycle, for instance, or a net water positivity, I think it doesn't get measured. And I also see that there is no resilience mechanisms. In some small pockets, I do see hope. So maybe a building or maybe a small community which is water starved will learn to manage water, but then that's about it. But it cannot manage a flood. So managing of floods is also very important. Actually, it's so very straightforward to consider or plan for flood situations, but they're not done. So I'll leave it at yeah. So I'll leave you my favorite this thing. Rainforests are not areas where rain occurs and forests happen. It's where forests are and rain happens. So I think this cause affecting in biology itself, we were very careful not to confuse between cause and effect, and it can go circular, and when it go to social systems, definitely cause and effect are very, very diffused. And when it comes to complex adaptive systems like the one we are talking about on how we manage our own water, so that it's even more harder. So I'll leave you with a indigenous wisdom from Kenya, which one of my friends works on, Will Reddick. So basically he says is that we've been accounting with money, the numbers. We do not have social models for understanding money. And the indigenous Kenyans had a system where they call it, the practices are called Moira and Dome. Moira is essentially resource coordination, and Dome is essentially it's more of governance, but for me, they speak about elderhood. So what is not happening is that there is no elders in this village. Either everybody wants to be an elder, or the kids want to be elders, or nobody wants to coordinate resources. So the Moira and the Dome part, not interacting, not working well in a community, is what prevents resilience to take forward. So I'll stop with that, and we can continue.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful context. I think on the regenerative agriculture, a forest does generate the rain, and the deforestation efforts have created deserts. At the same time, we're seeing rain brought back with microclimates as people plant trees, and we heard about the tree bog a few months ago in this community. So thank you for that reminder that we can leverage nature also. And
most
I'm
of
going
them.
to.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And thank you, Chakri. And thank you for the smiles and the enthusiasm. You bring hope to this challenging topic. And it is called a wicked problem because no one's really solved it across the globe. And Mordecai, you're dealing with those big municipalities and looking at policy, which was referenced earlier. So I'm wondering if you could just talk about the global vantage point and also these large scale systems. What moves the needle when we talk about the interconnectedness and having them function together to reduce water loss? So Mordecai, that's over to you to start. And if we can keep our answers to about 2 minutes, and then we'll go to 2 more questions before we go to the group.
Okay. It's not a strict answer, I think. It's first of all, it's the cost of the water loss, then the lack of water to be able to supply to the customers are the high motivations for that, and there is also regulation. I mentioned the regulation before, and I think it's, especially in Israel, it's notable. all over the world, you have the standards organizations. There is the ISO. For example, I was the leader of a guideline for water loss investigation guideline, how to run a water loss survey, and based on that to define strategy and the estimation of projects to reduce the water loss. So I don't know. I think this is it.
Can I take a stab at it, Mary, also?
Hello?
Go ahead. I just want to make sure with what you're talking about, Mordecai, with ISO and the role there. Can you just describe how the municipalities are expected to respond to those ISO standards? And then Chakri, you'll have the chance to add in right after Susan, if you could. But yeah.
The ISO is an international organization, and every country decides whether to apply the ISO standards in the country. This is done by the national standards organizations. And for example, there are certain countries like the US or Germany, which I think by law, they have to apply all the ISO standards in their countries. So once for example, this guideline was published, now it's a must in Germany to run water loss service according to that. Other countries can decide, like in Israel, it was decided to apply only part of the guideline, not all of it. Some of the recommendations there are not needed really in Israel. So in the end, it provides, in a way you could say, provides knowledge and also criteria for how to manage your system. Standards are not only for water loss, for the maintenance of the water supply system, for the operation, even for toilets. There are certain standards, like in everything. There is a technical committee which is called 224, which relates to all kinds of water issues.
Thank you. I think that's pretty impressive. And I think the compliance issues, whether standards have any meat to them depends on, are there penalties? Are there, is there someone monitoring who's doing what and, overseeing all of this? But you have a better perspective on that, and we appreciate your chiming in here. So, yeah, and Susan, if you could talk a little bit about, the policies and the motivations within that in-building water system, and where you see people make decisions to actually take action.
Sure. I think, from a building perspective, most of the buildings are owned by private owners, or let's say educational institutions or things like that. And from a private enterprise perspective, for any conservation initiative to grab wide acceptance, it needs to have a return on investment. People, they talk about sustainability, they talk about water, but their motivation is bottom line. So whatever you're presenting has to be presented in a way where they're going to be able to have a positive ROI. And it doesn't have to be instantaneous, but it has to be within 2 or 3 years. So it can't be something that's going to take 20 or 30 years to get their money back. So I think packaging these solutions in a way that speaks to the bottom line will have more widespread adoption. As far as governmental regulations, certainly there are, you need to have low flow toilets now that flush below a certain rate, and that is regulated if you want to get your development plan approved. This is for new construction. So there are some of these, regulatory issues that are helping decrease water usage, but even a low flow toilet isn't low flow if it leaks, right? So we've been focusing on how to really emphasize how a leak detection device in toilets can really give them a positive ROI, sometimes within 8 months, sometimes within a year, but it's very short window because we know it won't be adopted if that return on investment where they're making money from the water they're saving by not having a high water and sewer bill. You know, if that isn't a short-term time frame, it's just not going to get adopted, and then we're going to have, you know, millions of leaking toilets. So it's really a function of how to talk to private enterprise. I think at some point leak detection on toilets will be mandated, even if it's just new construction. I think at some point it will be, but I just don't know. I don't know when. And the other ways that we could do it over here is if they started, you know, issuing tax credits and things like that. Now, as far as systems working together, a lot of the utilities now do have rebates for water conservation products and initiatives. And so that's a way that two parts of the system are working together to try and save water. But again, that's all happening on the, not happening from a governmental perspective, but on a private enterprise perspective.
Yeah. Well, great context and reason to turn it over to Chakri, because I think you're talking about the economic ecosystem. Mordecai's talking about sort of the political and municipal ecosystem and the motivations there. And we also have an ecosystem, which is what the California Water Board calls the water program. So Chakri, you had a comment on Mordecai's earlier comments, and tell us about how we manage this ecosystem.
No, well, more about the point you were asking about how do you move the needle in this case. I know, I mean, I think a lot of folks here have been moving the needle in a lot of places, yet they're very unhappy about they haven't yet moved the big needle. So, I mean, it was quite a lesson learning, I mean, or listening to Dr. Hariharan on June 6th evening. I think that day will be etched for me for a long time. Just coming back to, we have a warm data lab in the Bateson Institute. The warm data lab essentially says, how do you move things? And it essentially comes from trans-contextuality. The other thing that's very important is that you have to find opportunities of trust. You have to take actions which create trust. We have to open up the spaces. Right now, I think there was a couple of comments out there. I think Nageshji was mentioning, why are we suspecting governments and protesting? I think also Sandeep, a long time ago in June, July, had talked to me about what level governance. So it's not a problem of the government. ISO will not solve anything that you and me don't want to solve. So it has to be visceral. And I think water is that visceral thing. There are communities I know which don't get any rainfall at all, period. And then they manage their water beautifully. And it happens quite a bit. There are lots of other stories as well. I remember one place we wanted to build a school, and so we were sitting in the village and talking to them, and they were saying, okay, we want to build a village for you because a school for you because you don't have a school in the village. So the women said, no, we don't need a school. We can build it ourselves. So then what do you need? So it says, just make sure that water comes to our village. So all it took us was a couple of pumps and about 10 kilometers of pipeline, and we got water to the community. And those women in 2002, in a matter of 6 months, had essentially translates to about $6 million worth of revenue that they could generate because they were not traveling for water. Just the women. So that was the economic output because of water availability. So it has to be visceral. It has to be, I think Dr. Hariharan has talked a lot about responsibility. I think somewhere the responsibility and accountability for everybody, and not just as individuals, but as groups as well, families, communities, cities, towns, villages, the internetworks, all of those kind of things are important. The trans-contextuality and the emotionality that goes with it, that is what moves systems. I mean, I think you're also a fan of Vanilla Meadows and the levels of leverage that she put out there. I think that's one way to work. But just simple change models like how does this pinch people? How do they sit up and say, okay, we'll manage water as well or better than we manage money? Thanks, Mary.
Well, that's a inspirational vision and a great reason to turn it over to Mordecai, who's handling what I would call the big bank of water across the globe. So someone asked in the chat, how do we balance the use of municipal water and the high level of non-revenue water or water loss with the needs for the environment and other water uses, other people demanding water. So if you could comment on looking at the municipal use of water and their systems and what you would wish if you could, through standards or through education, change the way water is managed at that level.
Actually, what you say is that there is one water balance. Water which is saved by reducing the leakage of the non-revenue water, and as Susan mentioned, leaking from toilets or whatever, the water which is saved there can be used for other purposes, especially in cases of lack of water, scarce water resources, which is, again, the case, for example, in Israel. I use again Israel as an example. We have one water balance. Because if you consider potable water, it can be used for domestic and municipal uses, but it could be also used for agriculture. But for agriculture, you could use also reclaimed water. So we have one total water balance, and water is shifted from use to use. And then you can actually control the water demand and also the water supply. So I hope that this answers to the question.
I think you actually provide the best model globally that people look to with Israel. And it's become a culture of, practice there in Israel. What would you say many people say because Israel's so small, that's easy to orchestrate. But what does Israel do that other countries could actually replicate that aren't so small, in your mind, if they could learn from what Israel has done?
You have, obviously, Israel is tiny, especially comparing with India, but also every large country is divided to zones or to states, and then you can manage each state or each area in the same way. To have control, or you might have legislation for the entire country, which applies policies for the utilities, and then local policies according to the situation of the state. And again, we all ate, I think that I would say something. We tend to criticize regulation, right? It's always a burden on us how to manage things. But regulation might be, in our case, I think, is very good, because then the utilities are obligated to work accordingly and to be in a certain limit of action, which is moving the industry forward. Obviously, the management of each utility, you can manage each utility in a different way and be a little bit more efficient and less efficient. But if, for example, the service period of a water meter is below 5 years, then you have to replace all the meters every 5 years or every 10 years, and this is by law. So you cannot play games with that. You cannot extend the period of the meter. You have to keep on going. You have to the budget for that and the work plans for that. It's not on you to decide. The same might apply for the lifespan of pipes. In this case, for example, in Israel, it's 35 years. I think it's too low. We could use larger periods, but you are imposed to replace pipes every 35 years. So the level of service is maintained and the system is not deteriorating.
Mhm. Which is great, which is really great. I mentioned they talked about how we could grab the attention of US water users. And I said, why don't they just shut off the water for half a day? And the leaders said, well, then all the pipes would collapse and we would have a much bigger problem. So we cannot
Don't
do
do
that.
that. No,
Which
you don't want to
is
go there.
right, but you have to understand the system and be working with it to know that pressure and flows and temperatures and all of these things impact your water use and the efficiency and also the way we engage people. So, so Susan, moving that over to you, what lessons have you learned and what would you like to see happen if there was a way to better optimize the system and get people to act more quickly on intelligent management?
Well, I think we do need, we need massive education, and at least from a building perspective, where I kind of live, we need a massive, and we need to target the very young audience. I think I know that millennials and younger are much more in tune with just the environment, conservation in general. They're starting to drive the market with sustainability, proof of sustainability initiatives in places like hospitality, and where they will not stay at a hotel unless it passes certain metrics from a sustainability standpoint. So I think the education is a big component. The other thing is that Mordecai makes a really good point in that we're using potable water to flush toilets. We don't need to use potable water to flush toilets. Nobody's drinking that water. And so if there was a way, and I don't know what the expense would be, and I don't know what the technology would be, but if there's a way to use, whether it's gray water or, if we could use something other than potable water to flush toilets, or to do other things that we're using potable water for, it could save a tremendous amount. And so I think that it's really comes down to, education, being smarter, working together, a lot of the things that we've talked about here.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's great segue to Chakri. So how do we educate and get these people, the youth, to carry this message forward?
I thought you would ask me that. Yeah, it's strange because I think you kind of I was hoping to introduce Aarti's work here, and so Aarti did something very interesting. One of my colleagues, and she comes on this forum quite a bit, and what she did was to work with youth from a top-down perspective, going from the district education officers all the way to the children via the parents, via the schools, and then take a feedback loop back to the corporates and to the government. And in a span of 3 years, she worked over 400,000 educators across 7 states in India. And
Wow.
you can actually get to everybody. I think there is I think it's a bad idea to think that we cannot get to everybody. It's 7 billion is a very small, or 8 billion is a very small number. Trust a graduate student in mathematics for 4 years to tell you that. So 8 billion is too small a number that we cannot communicate to everybody. Even ants and others do that very well. Actually, there's a lot to learn from ants and other ways on how to communicate and how to actually manage these resources. And I'll leave that aside. But the thing, as I was mentioning before, it's the visceral connect. In some of the communities, as many of my Indian friends will know here, if you go to a typical prayer situation in India at home, there's a little bit of a fire, a little bit of water, a little bit of flower, a little bit of this and that and all of that. So the whole nature is in there, and it's held with such sacredness. That's when the difference comes. So, the sensitivity to the elements. There's a story that really touched me when I was a kid. This is from the Amar Chitra Katha, that the comic books of India. And So this kid is watering the plants at home, and the father is like, very good, very good. And he says, what happens when you stop watering? The plants will die. Is the kid is responding. So the father takes the kid to the forest, and he says, who's watering these plants? So I think there is something that happens at a community level. There's something that happens. A lot of it is not in our consciousness. It's not seen by us. But at the same point in time, I think peer pressure has always been looked at as negative. But when peer pressure is positive, when it is in resource sharing, that is what is a social fabric. So we do have to talk about it. I mean, in a lot of other issues in the US, as you know, Mary, it has become a point of conversation on how boys and girls relate to each other, for example. But why not relate to, how do we relate to water? Why is this not talked about? There was a school program we were funding in West Bengal. This is 25, 30 years ago. And they would give plants to the children, and their assignment at the end of the year was, did the plant grow or not? If the plant didn't grow, the plant died, the parents would get fined. So I thought it was a very interesting way to bring in the
Motivator.
sensitivity. Yeah, I'll stop with that.
Yeah, no, well, there's a beautiful comments by our panel, and we're going to come back at the end for just your final word after we hear from people in the group. But I noticed Appala Yandretti is here, and he's motivating India Youth for Society. And I just, if you could just comment, unmute Appala and share what has motivated the youth, and what do you think more of us could do to engage them in managing water systems. And Apollo runs a program to clean up plastic cleanup and pollution across India. So supported by Rotary. I'm hoping you're still here, Apollo. I saw you there.
Mamta wanted to share.
I don't see him here, Mary.
I'm sorry.
There.
I have no power, electricity power now. Yeah, a lot of insights, Mary. Thanks for. I mean, he did not send me notice this time, but I saw it on LinkedIn and I joined the meeting. At my yard, at my plant, actually, we brought a toilet from a company as under charity fund. What happened is that some people broke the pipes and closets and took them away, and the water tank. It's not that for their usage, just to sell them away and get some money. This is not only, I mean, it did not happen here only, but it happened many other places. Maintenance is very bad. I agree with Mordecai. Maintenance in India is very bad, and nobody cares it. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, we need to blame the government because they are not taking action. Earlier, I used to support, but it is time to ask the government to keep an eye on them, watch them seriously, and take action.
Yeah, and I think also the wonderful examples and outcomes that you achieve with youth, Apollo, is a great motivator. That keeps people coming out and also causes people to follow you. I don't know if you would agree, but thank you for chiming in. And
that also, I mean, I just wanted to write later. I did not really ask that. How AI can find those leaks. It's an interesting innovation. Finding all the leaks and then getting them repaired immediately. That's wonderful. I mean, that's wonderful thing said by the speaker panelist.
Yeah, Susan, if you just want to comment on finding the leaks with toilets and.
Sure, I can talk about this all day long.
Maybe just limit it to 1 minute because we have a few people.
Yes, I know. So we have a device that goes inside the toilet tank that uses a smart water height sensor to monitor rise and fall of water height over time, and we can tell the difference between a flush and the various running toilet, faulty fill valve, leaking through the flapper, running, a wide open flush valve, different things that happen inside the toilet tank that waste water. So it installs in seconds, lasts for half of forever, and it quantifies everything. So people know exactly how much water they're using for either flushing a toilet or for the leaks.
Which is amazing. And their tools also, the AMI for the large scale systems. But BK Prasad knows a lot of this. And I know Mamta wanted to talk also. So BK, from the plumbing perspective, if you could unmute and share your thoughts. Great to have you here. And thank you for touring Susan last month. She said how wonderful that was.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, it was a very good session, what she had with all the experts in the field in Bangalore. Yeah. See, we are pushing the people, the domestic users, to the wall already. See, what are we talking about? 80% of the water in India is used by agriculture, 16% by industry, and 4% poor guys, 140 or million people, 140, that's right, 1,400 million people are using it. See, in Israel, they use first for people and then it goes to agriculture. We can talk so many things about Israel, but can it be done in India? No. See, we are already pushing the people to the wall. We are not providing water to them. We are asking them to use less. See, we have a very big program on 27th of this month, the Government of India, the Bureau of Water Use Efficiency, the Ministry of Jal Nigam and National Water Mission, along with Indian Plumbing Association. We are having a very big program on water use efficiencies. But what are we talking about? Only for the 4% of the water? Why not control where it is being wasted in agriculture? That's the most important aspect. I've been repeatedly saying this, even I've spoken many times to Hariharan about this. 80% of the water where it's being used wasted. If we can even divert 10% of the water to the domestic users, now everybody will have 24/7 water, as Mordecai was talking about. Right, sir? That's my view.
Well, I
Important, and
could
that's
ask
why
you.
Mordecai. Go ahead, Mordecai.
I could ask you how efficient is the agriculture use of water?
Very poor,
Maybe
sir.
you could be
Very, very bad. Very, very bad.
Very
very
poor,
bad.
sir.
So,
Very
so
poor.
that's another issue.
Yeah.
So, Mordecai, we have Netafim, a big industry player, which is, of course, an import for us from Israel.
Jane,
Yeah.
Netafim,
Drip
for
irrigation.
drip irrigation.
That's right.
yeah, I know. But you also have Jane. It's in India.
Right,
Jane,
right.
Jane irrigation.
Yeah.
Jane
Yeah.
irrigation. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Big name.
So
Mamta, if you could unmute. I think great comments here. I think if we can find the biggest sink, just like toilets or agriculture, and close those up. Mamta, I think you're still muted. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Well, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yes. Hi, good evening. Wish you all a happy and healthy, prosperous new year. What I wanted to share when he was talking about the childhood. So I requested in another forum regarding agriculture to introduce farming practicals in the schools, because they read a lot. We all read a lot in social studies regarding agriculture, water, various things. So that is getting implemented. This is through Global Indian Scientists and Technocrats. Now, and sharing my experience of childhood, what we used to do is we were in a railway colony. So all of us, now what they talk about 1 square gardening, same thing, small plots were given to us, small ones. And we used to grow one ladyfinger, one this, and once a month or wherever we used to have a pool, all the children used to come together and do it. So what I thought is suddenly this rain reach program they are doing, I think I got an idea now that let me see if we can contact somebody somehow through some connects and introduce rainwater as a chapter in the curriculum. If that comes, then they will do it. Because I'm part of these laughter clubs. My father started in Karnataka, and now laughter therapy is one chapter in the CBSE syllabus. So I think if we introduce rainwater harvesting, because in science exhibition, you will see many of the children doing rainwater harvesting models. I have seen it in my son's school only, couple of years back. Many of them, even today, they do make models. So we should, let's see. But farming has been introduced. That's what somebody, the admin who's in US, he called me and told me that they are introducing farming practicals in the schools now, CBSE schools.
Beautiful idea. Yeah, that got me connected to water when I was 10 years old, a practice and an opportunity to speak and share ideas. So amazing. And Hari has mentioned a few key people here who I know have ideas to lend to this conversation. I also want to acknowledge A.K. Shyam, if you are a regular contributor to Global Waterworks and have written a lot on these water systems, if your perspectives here on what do we need to do with systems thinking.
Well, Mary, thank you very much. But I had shared with you that I am an energy expert. And incidentally, I have been on the water as well. And a couple of points which Chakradhar mentioned and also Mamata talked about are pretty interesting because these are things which probably need to be promoted. And the second thing that I thought may not be applicable right away, but what I find from the energy point of view is the floating solar, which is coming up in a big way. Now, the floating solar is interfering with the ecosystem of the water body, aquatic system. So I think probably we need to take this moment and also address this issue in a larger way, so that we protect our water bodies. And imagine in the course of another 5 years or 10 years down the line, I think probably we will lose 50 to 60% of the water bodies. So that's what I was thinking about. And this has been an excellent interaction. In fact, I missed the initial part of it because I was waiting for the sessions to start. But in the process, I missed about 15, 20 minutes initial discussion. But I love to have the recorded version. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. It has been an excellent interaction.
You always have good wisdom there, AK. I appreciate it. And I think the energy nexus, the connection to water and energy, Susan knows can save if we save water, we save energy because of the transport pieces. And I want Hari to chime in here, but Santana Gopal, you have unique perspectives on this. What are your thoughts for the group? Thank you for joining.
Well, I think the topic was 24/7. Then I found that actually what we are talking about is efficient use of water. Because the whole of Bangalore has 24/7 water. Everybody gets it, puts it into a sump, sends it 30, 40, 50 floors up and has it. So none of the consumers ever suffering from 24/7 except those who live in busties or have to physically store water. So I think, therefore, the idea is that, okay, how do we make these people more efficient use? There I have another issue. Mr. Mordecai, I want to ask you one question. I realize Israel is very smart, but your system of organizing water for agriculture is based on a bidding system, right? That bidding system makes farmers themselves to think of measures to conserve, use it efficiently, because that's how they can get the water. Nobody talks about what are those ideas that those people came up with. We only hear the mainstream talking, but not them. I know in India we have so many practices like that. Why am I pushing this? I think the eye of the needle cannot be pushed only by technocrats and finance capital. It has to come through a social engineering process. I think Chakri was suggestive of that. Why am I saying this? If that is triggered a lot of new consciousness and ideas and creativity of the farmers, that is totally a black hole to us. And that is not a way a complete, genuine systems thinking should be. Why? Because if we are able to unleash that potential, they are going to come up with their ideas, etc. It will raise the benchmark. It will become a socialized process, not something else. It will also mean competition. People will try to excel, saying, I'm better saver than you. And there will be a leadership that will emerge. I think we are denying all of them and going for a very bureaucratic, technocratic, marketing-wise kind of a thing. So therefore, some of my question simply is this. Can you narrate me a couple of instances what the farmers have done, which scientists in Israel or the world over have never thought about? Because that will show us the direction to head. If we don't get that energy and that idea, we will continue to live in a world of ours, creating some other new problems with us. Now, let me take this a little to explain. All of us concede that drip is a very good system of water efficiency, right? But sir, the science of drip is field capacity to wilting point. Please remember. Now, what is the idea behind field capacity? What is the idea behind wilting point? If we don't understand that in the context of soil health and plant growth, we will only have a very fractured view. So I think it's equally important that we get literate and we look elsewhere beyond academics and experts. So I want some examples, sir. Thank you.
Mordecai, you want to?
I'm not sure I fully understood all the points. If we discuss about the efficiency of the agriculture, is that so?
Yeah.
Then it's not always. First of all, agriculture in Israel is a value. I mean, the state of Israel was established with the farmers that if you go way back to the land of Israel, it was actually neglected. And when we started populating the country, it was mainly by farmers who started cultivating all kinds of, established the agriculture and cultivations in Israel. So for us, populating the country and then in agriculture is a value that we would like to maintain. And as I'm not a politician, so I'm talking about my own experience right now and my own knowledge. Okay.
Allocation to agriculture, particular farmers, is based on a bidding system. It is not saying any farmer.
It's based on what?
Bidding system. The farmer will say, I will produce so much with so much quantity of water of certain value. And from the premise on which the grid would supply the water. That doesn't exist in India. So therefore, I'm sure that push gave a lot of bright ideas that farmers have. And I think that mine of wealth, that is something that we totally ignore or don't understand or don't even want to. And there's nothing written about it. Israel talks so much about, what they have done. Marvels, no doubt about that. But look, where do good ideas come from?
Gopalji, I don't want this Israel conversation to hijack what we are discussing here, because Israel is what? It's not even. I mean, it's a population of some of one county of Bangalore, let's say, right?
10 million.
So, we are not even talking about it. It's like one small company which can be efficient. I can show you, 1,000 companies larger than the size of Israel in India, which is doing enormously well when it comes to water or energy efficiency. So we'll take that out of the stream of this conversation, Gopalji, if you don't mind my saying so. But I take your point. We need to have some incentivizing and not just a deterrent regulation to see how farmers can get down to utilizing probably, for instance, 5 million liters to a hectare of paddy instead of the 10 million that has become the norm in this country over the last, say, 40, 50 years. So such things can be brought in. Over to you, Gopalji.
Yeah. So I want to just add to what Gopalji was saying. So in some of the communities we worked with, some of the farmers, the richer ones, want to grow sugarcane, and sugarcane is a water guzzler. Initially, they won't listen, but then we got the community processes going, and we convinced those things that in this area, sugarcane shouldn't be grown because it is it is kind of taking more water than things. So the point about social behavior in communities, especially farming communities, is possible. In Uttarakhand, we've seen the similar behavior, but in relation to forest management. So women essentially, as you know, the formal system doesn't work. So in front of the formal system, the women of the local village governance council, the women will sit together and say, okay, this is what we need to do, and they will they will have facilitators, and they will be practical, and they work these things through. So there are a lot of things happening at farming thing, but I think the efficiency, as Dr. Hariharan and Mordecai was mentioning, is a straightforward win for but I think if we are not metering them, I think somewhere we need to meter that as well. So once we get into a larger metering things, not just the as you were saying, the 4%. I think BK Prasad ji was saying, you stop metering the 4%, or you meter the 4%, but now you meter the 60% as well.
Gopalji, do you have a take on what BK said earlier about 20% of all of India's renewable annual water is in the urban sector, between industrial and the kind of consumption that we have in services and so on, and the residential sector. 80% or 82% is agricultural. So where should the focus be for a country like ours? What is it that we should not be learning from other countries?
Well, I think certainly agriculture has a huge scope to reduce water. But that doesn't mean that's made available to cities. That is not the thing. That only means there are other ecological demands on water. We are just looking at what are sectors, how much manufacturing, how much services, how much, which is a very blinkered view. Because when you understand ecosystem, why does he say the rivers should not be interlinked? It is coming from a totally different point of view. But if supply was only your worry, then you're going to look at it saying, let's link the rivers. So I'm saying the direction of thinking does not, one, factor in all these aspects which are critical for a systems thinking, for a holistic systems approach. It could be work in progress, that's that. But otherwise we will continue to perpetuate that only people who are educated know, those people who are practicing on the ground absolutely are illiterate. They have nothing to tell us. Whereas there is a mine of ideas that will multiply by itself.
Gopalji, my question is very specific. In view of what Mordecai and others said. Sorry, give me 60 seconds, 30 seconds maybe. So Gopalji, my question is this. In a country, and there is only China which can be a parallel to us, or anything that's comparable to us. In a country which has today 1.2 million liters as per capita availability, and a third of that, about 0.4 million, being used every year, what should India be doing? Should it focus on industrial water and urban water, which is together combined no more than 20%? Or should it do something dramatic on agricultural water?
Sir, I think both industrial and urban are actually the creamy markets. That's where all attention will be given. Agriculture is the biggest area to save, where none of these models will work. Absolutely, that is what I'm trying to tell you. You don't have solutions to them. So therefore, you're going to sort of say, this is the market. And 20% is a very large market, affluent market.
Right. And the other thing that we heard all through today was on the supply side. Why are we not talking demand side? I think only Chakradhar mentioned about demand side. And of course, beyond the economic equations on both demand and supply side is this other unquantifiable called behavior and, crashing those barriers. Anyone on that, please? On why we should focus on demand side. It holds good for water. It holds good for energy too.
Well, I think probably there are a couple of points which I thought I would bring to the notice of the participants here. Number one, when we look at the interconnections of the hydrological cycle of the lakes and the water bodies and the rivers, I think they themselves have a pretty comfortable moisture content in the soil. Now, spending about 80% of water for agriculture seems to be ridiculous. Considering the hydrological network, if one could plan out what is the water requirement in each zone, I think probably that would drastically bring down the percentage of consumption in agriculture. And secondly, now we'll be talking about the industry. Industries have been mandated to minimize the water consumption, including the power plants. And I remember the power plants have been recycling most of the water, because you may not believe that the water requirement, even just for the disposal of ash, is tremendous, because it is disposed in a slurry and a pond is created. Now, this kind of restrictions on the industry and also the agricultural sector would probably allow greater percentage of water available to the other sectors, including the residential as well.
Excellent point. I think this conversation could continue for quite some time. We limited it to 90 minutes, and I just wanted to point out in the chat that I did put in a link so that we can continue the conversation and discussions in the Global Water Works group, and those who are in WhatsApp know about the WOW Leaders group as well. Hari, I want to turn it over to the speakers, but get your thoughts first. And Pratibha had shared some specific things in the chat. I'm wondering if you could just comment on those resources with integrated water resource management. They're excellent. I'm going to bring them up here.
Sure.
So Pratibha, could
Yes,
you
Pratibha?
unmute?
Do you want to speak up, Pratibha? Okay. Maybe Ajay Singh, maybe you have a take on these things. Would you want to speak up, please? You have handled large installations and you have worked hard on demand-side solutions. Ajay Singh?
Yeah,
Yes.
good evening, everybody. Basically, I'd been an engineer with railways for over 30 years, and I can vouch with what Mr. Shyam has told, that we had tried to kind of become water self-sufficient as far as industrial use is concerned. But yes, in Indian context, as is there in any other sector like transportation, in water also, technologically, we have a very varied kind of scenario. On one hand, you have, as somebody very rightly pointed out, most of our systems, they're not pressurized all the time. They are having intermediate power supply, especially the trunk and mains. As somebody told that probably in Bangalore, I live in Bangalore. In Bangalore, in apartment complexes and all, you have 24/7 supply because it gets pumped up in your local overhead tank. But yes, the situation in even urban scenario in India is quite varied, quite complex. And what I was giving the transportation sector analogy was that, you will find all kind of situations here. It's not a very uniform. So probably in a very, very localized manner, you have to give solutions. Industry also, in industrial context also, different industries, like I was heading a wheel manufacturing plant, basically, which is a heavy steel industry. So there different kind of water requirement is there. And the water qualitatively, it doesn't get messed up much. What happens is, the water as it is requirement is more, but the discharge is not much. But in other industries, you may have issues of, water which is incoming, getting polluted by various chemicals and others, so that it requires a totally different approach. What I feel is, given Indian context, given our background in technology, especially software and now hardware sector also, we have to kind of quickly digitize our water resources. It's challenge given the kind of things we are having. To give an example, like specifically many meters and all, they will not work properly if you are having intermittent water supply. So the data, what is generated by these, systems, sensors and meters and other things, it might not be very reliable. So probably we'll have to as far as technology is concerned, develop our own technology, which will be very specific. And as Susan has been focusing on a very, very niche area of, toilet use and all. And that quantitatively, she is able to kind of prove that, even a single thing, if you take and work consistently, persistently on it, generate enough data which can be analyzed in different manner, we'll have a tremendous amount of results. I think if we, at least at the aggregate level, if we kind of start from very basic metering in agriculture, it will be great. I'll give another example. My last assignment before I quit railways was with the Southwestern Railway. It's got a quite big geography, more than 4,000 kilometers spread over 4 states. And when I joined, even the basic metering was not there at the stations. We were going by the old yardstick of what is the footfall at a station, and then we multiply with, a metric and all that. So we first started metering at a very aggregate level. So that itself, see, water, one thing is there when you start talking about water data, water consumption, when we speak, we talk in aggregates and averages, but water is having a seasonality, especially in Indian context. The water use in January, February, March, April, all these months will be different. So we have to generate enough data, have a kind of a baseline season-wise, seasonality-wise, and probably that will help us in focusing where things are going wrong. As Mary has been telling, I mean, we can keep on talking about it, so I'll stop there. This is a little bit few thoughts which came to my mind.
Yeah, those are excellent. And I think experience says everything. And Nagash Aras had a comment here on, governance in our water systems and the integrated water resource management. Nagash, if you just have a minute or to highlight what you found helpful here, this is a beautiful mapping of our water resources that you put in the chat. If you could unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. See, basically, this was in the context of Bengaluru city, which basically is more, having lakes, a large amount of lakes, which may not be true in other cities and other countries even. So this is in that context, it's a rather a limited, in that limited context, this was written actually. But basically, most of it will be applicable to other cities and even non-cities as well. So rather than IWRM, my focus was IUWM, basically. I mean, in the urban scenario, basically, and in the Indian context. So like what Susan actually mentioned, that factor is almost not applicable to Indian toilets because all of us actually use cistern. So leakage of water is not a factor. So like that, we have a certain kind of applicability, which basically we should consider while considering the applicability of the learnings which are taken from outside. Mordecai actually highlighted certain aspects, but consider that the population of Bangalore is comparable to the entire population of Israel, and we are concentrated, almost 10 times the population density. And, coupled with that, the capability of spending is much less. I mean, per capita income, if you compare, we are nowhere. I mean, compared to Israelis. So, and then on top of that, you add to it the inequality of, income in the city, within the city. So therefore, there are a lot of disadvantaged, population which rely on the government's funding and things like that. And on top of that, the rapid expansion of the city actually puts a lot of other constraints that, they are falling, way behind in the, arrangement of water system and all that. Even these, 110 villages which got merged in the city, which like, almost like 40% of the population lives in the far-flung, outer areas. They don't have, sewage treatment plants and this sewage drainage network and all that. So it's a, the surface flow is, now mixed up, unfortunately. So
Wow.
this kind of scenario, basically, we have to consider on top of whatever learning comes from, outside actually. So what I would love to have is a sort of IBIS graph. Maybe, people can actually, make it applicable to any scenario like urban, rural, or whatever. IBIS, for those who don't know, is, it talks about, wicked problems and thinks of all the different types of solutions, and we actually can come to a near solution. For wicked problem, this is a wicked problem. Water is a wicked problem, and so we cannot actually arrive at a perfect solution. So we will have to make do with whatever is the, the near optimal solutions, considering again our income constraints and things like that. So I would definitely love to have maybe international project which basically hosts this IBS diagram. I can actually moderate it or curate it, and then we can actually, go forward with online collaboration, like people coming up with inputs, like what we have in this chat. Actually, different people have started off in a completely separate topics, but they are related to our, and ultimately the graph gets developed actually. So to bring it in, to connect it to relevant points and how they interact, everything can be studied using IBIS graph, or at least a debate graph if that platform is not available. And then we should be doing that.
Could you put the name of that? I'm not hearing it clearly in the chat, the IBIS graph, if that's what you linked or what I added. That was beautiful.
Yeah, so IBIS is information based issue system. So IBIS basically was designed to, it is not a very popular type of graph, but given, the complexity of the situation and the variations in the, in the cases, like for example, within India also we have distinct cases for metros. Then the smaller cities have a completely different environment in which we have to consider the same water issue. Rural areas, and within rural areas also there are, areas which are near other cities, and truly remote areas, which basically, it's very difficult to make the resources reach there. And given our GDP, the total GDP, how much of share we can actually put as assigned to that kind of a problem. That is why we have a lot of issues in, urban migration is worsening because of that issue. People just give up and they come to the cities.
Yeah.
So
very well said.
Excellent
Very well
resources.
said,
Hari?
Sorry, Mary. I was just saying that, Mr. Nagesh, we need to request you to offer us a full-length presentation in one of these sessions in the future. What you said is so very relevant to not just one city called Bangalore, but to everything else in this country, if you were to take this urban-rural kind of face-off. Thank you so much for your insights. Over to you, Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Hari. Excellent community here. And speaking of that, the key to solving water is working together, and water can unite us. But we need to see everyone. So I'm wondering if everyone could unmute or make their videos visible, and we'll take a picture so we remember this time and know each other. Hopefully our names are here. And then I just want to have, and AJ, you had one comment as people are opening up their visuals. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Mordecai. Since you are in standardization space, one problem when I started to digitize water, which I faced was there is no standardization. Each vendor will throw out data in their own manner. So is there a now standards devised which says that all the data which is thrown out of the field level devices, it is in a specific format and it is interoperable. So that is cross-platform compatibility I'm talking about.
As far as I know, there isn't. Especially if you consider AMI systems, which transmit the meter readings. There is now, I think, a new standard, very new standard, which is not yet common. I haven't studied yet, but the problem of the having each provider of AMI system has got his own customized system. And the issue of interoperability is really a problem.
Yeah, that's why aggregation becomes a big issue. You don't agree, you're not able to aggregate from all the streams, and then you really don't get the picture, real picture.
Yeah, that's a problem. This is called the data silos. Like, for example, if you have the billing system data, it is not connected to the SCADA system. Even AMI systems are rarely integrated with SCADA systems. So, but it is changing. It will change because now we are in the kind of maybe revolution of technologies and availability of data.
Since you are in the ISO committee, my request is please do something about it. Otherwise, lots of data is being thrown up, and nobody can collect. No system can collect it and aggregate it.
Yeah, believe me, I'm on it.
Thank you.
Holy Grail. So, so Mordecai, a closing comment and anything lesson you want people to take away?
No, because it was mentioned that, for example, you cannot really consider Israel as an example because of it's tiny, but I think that the major way of thinking and methodologies could be applied also for larger countries, like having a regulation from the state or the city or whatever, and applying proper policies and activities to save and extend the water supply system. In my view, I want to end with a story. Okay, I was involved in Pune, in the 24/7 project of Pune. And then we went on a site inspection tour to see how the water is supplied in certain low-income neighborhood. And there was this woman that once she noticed that we are discussing the water supply, she rushed into her house and returned with the glass of yellow water, totally yellow water. This is the water that she got from the water system. So for me, no more yellow water.
You can see it. Hopefully we can fix it. That's beautiful. And it's beautiful but sad. As you look at the system, as Chakri said, and Chakri, maybe you go next. What do you think is needed, a key lesson learned, or?
I think we need to sit with this, and when the video comes out, I think we need to come back and kind of soak it in and say, okay, now what? And I think we've been off on our own tangents. So let's come back and bring some coherence to this conversation.
Right. Actually, Mr. Nagesh said that too, that, we are coming from different contexts, and that, well, we need an IBIS graph probably, and he will enable that for us or facilitate the process. Right.
Yes. Yes, and I know there were many experts here on the call who can join, and hopefully you'll contribute in the communities in the discussion. And thank you. Susan, final comments. Ladies should go first. I'm sorry, I'm making you last.
I just think, one of the things that's underscored today is just how much the different stakeholders need to work together. We don't talk enough. And the other thing is that something that may work in the United States may not work in India, just because we're, just for a lot of reasons. And so we can all kind of work together and focus on education, but then as you drill down into the actual actions, it may look different in different countries, but it all gets to the same result. And the other thing is, I think there's a lot of focus on the big things, and sometimes you need to start with the smaller aspects, because every drop of water that we're saving, that we're, it all adds up. So don't ignore the smaller approaches that might be less expensive or easier to implement.
Yeah, one thing I
So
learned just before.
in Israel, for many years, Susan, we had the slogan, every drop counts.
Yeah.
It was part of our education as children.
Yeah,
for many
one
years.
thing I learned just before COVID was the quality of water in your neighborhood is the quality of your health. There are a lot of diseases when the water is stagnant. There's a huge WHO study in India about that. So quality of water is quality of health.
Mm-hmm.
Yellow water.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So we saw the global perspective, the ISO have a command or a request for transformation of the whole water sector.
Yeah, sorry, Mary. I just thought I'd make one very, very quick observation. Mordecai, this yellow water happens when we take borewell water from deep aquifers at, say, 300 meters plus or 200 meters plus. The second is it's yellow because of high TDS, sometimes over 1600 to 2000 count. I find this, for instance, I was working on another whatever set of challenges in a large expanse in Kolkata 2 weeks ago, and I find that even the blade of grass grows yellow because of this persistent high TDS. I just thought I'll make a mention of that, which means essentially, what we are doing when we go. Only a few people talked about decentralize and localize. Ajay Singh mentioned it too. But what we are doing is when we go central, when we depend upon the government with all these wonderful things that the state government or the central government will want to do, what happens is that we sort of rely on technologies. If I were to take Pune as an example and yellow water, if they stopped taking this deep borehole water and manage to do what they can with surface water, one half that problem will go away.
You might be right, but this is not the main issue I was referring to. The problem is when you have intermittent supply and the system gets the pressure
Slant, the hammer,
is zero,
the hammer effect.
zero pressure, and then underground water, sewage penetrates the pipes, also insects, and that causes the contamination of the water.
Sure, entirely with you. But that does not altogether make a case for 24/7. I can tell you that. We can discuss this offline another day.
Okay.
So much more to discuss. Reason for us to keep meeting together. And Ram Kumar, were you saying something or someone?
I
agree
with Dr. Hari that this use of this surface water and shallow aquifer can do a lot of good. And when we go to deep aquifers, it is not only the yellow water, further deeper, even arsenic is contaminated. That is the level to which we have got. And simple shallow aquifer recharge. Today, I'm glad to tell you, I'm returning from Achyutapuram on the way to Vizag. I would propagate this in simple solutions in 2 large plots, maybe 50, 60 acres of Indian oil. I'm just returning on the way. So my signal is not good, but I agree with Dr. Hari. In fact, maybe that is the area which I'm working on. Maybe I like to propagate it. So thank you. Thanks.
Right. Sure. I'm entirely with Mordecai too, Mary, when he says there are, good lessons to learn from the sort of efficiency cycles that Israel has built over time. But if I were to go to, let's say, Jaipur, which has been water-starved for centuries, you will find it's a city. If I take Udaipur, it's the same size as, the Cape of Good Hope. Same, and the population is about 1 million more than they have here in South Africa. And the South African story gets told everywhere, but no one will tell you the story of the strong community-based effort, like Chakradhar said, that makes that community, makes the entire city completely water neutral. In a place which receives 500 or even less as a rainfall compared to what they get in the Cape of Good Hope, right? So I'm saying that there are some wonderful examples right here in this country of things that have been done. We need to see how we can learn from them, not focus on those, that are not to be written about or you can't write home about, So there are things that we can do here from local examples, I believe. Mordecai, but I take your point.
Beautiful.
So,
Well,
thank you, sir.
yes, and Mordecai has been accessible to the world. He works with the
Lovely.
India attaché from Israel, but
Right.
thank you all for joining. I think next month we will have the International Water Association student president from Saudi Arabia talking about desalination and the measurement of water resources through that and water reuse. And then the following month, I mentioned we'll look at digitizing our water resources across the globe for security, for sustainability, for water quality. And I know there are many people here who have excellent ideas to contribute. I'm sorry, 90 minutes doesn't allow for everyone to get their thoughts in, but just know that your thoughts are welcome in either the WOW discussions. You can find them through alttech.foundation or through globalwaterworks.org. And we just applaud you all for your role and your commitment of giving this time. And we ask that you would be blessed by finding this time returned to you either through the connections, the network, or the positive information that you have gained. As Susan said, every little effort counts and we can start small and begin to make a difference. And Chakri reminded us that, it's through the youth and through our understanding of, is it the chicken or the egg or the rain or the forest? And Mordecai, thank you for lending your Israel insights. And we're in prayer for your hostages and just ask that we all find unity in these communities as we focus on water for politics, and it's a much more positive vibe, I think, sometimes. So thank you all.